You mentioned the Oneil Cruz thing. I was just weird too. Like the slide, I guess if you want to call that into home plate, it looked like he just got caught in between. It was more of like a slide slash stumble into home plate. But it's a shame, not just for fantasy players, but also Pirates fans who haven't had a lot to cheer for in recent seasons. Cruz was, saying in spring training he was aiming for like a 30-30, 40-40 type of season. I don't know if we were going to see that, but certainly one of the most exciting young players in the game. So even just from a baseball perspective, certainly disappointing to see that. So internal replacement in Pittsburgh for Cruz, Rodolfo Castro, likely the regular option there. Castro appeared in 71 games last year, hit 233, 11 homers, 725 OPS, 5 steals, and 8 attempts. Actually amounted to a 102 OPS plus, so he's above average hitter, but prone to the strikeout for sure, even in the minors, low on base percentage, but a young hitter, 23 years old. There's some juice there. I don't know about him. Your standard mixed league 10-12 team, you're probably not looking at Castro, but NL only, deeper mixed, I could see maybe taking a chance on Castro.
Yeah, I think you outlined it well. At least there's a little bit of category juice there, and we know the
Yep.
playing time is going to be his, for about 3 months. So
Yep.
in the deeper formats, you could do worse. Because the guys we're going to mention for the shallower mixed leagues are going to be long gone to you. So, and the other thing with Castro is because he wasn't playing because he was blocked by Cruz. I mean, he's available everywhere. So
Yeah.
he's the type of guy that in those NL only formats or in those really deep mixed leagues with big benches, he's the type of guy you might look at.
Yeah, so let's get into some of these other alternatives. And you said already, the field of I was just looking strictly at middle infielders. Like, let's say you need to fill that.
Mhm.
Even that is kind of underwhelming. Bryson Stott, who's off to a decent start, Gene Segura, who can fill up some categories. Jon Berti, I think, is somewhat interesting. Joey Wendell's on the injured list with an oblique injury right now, so Berti should play a bunch in that Marlins infield, and we know what he can do when he plays. He runs, and especially a season like this, he may run every chance he gets. So I don't know. I kind of like Berti maybe as a short term fill in there. You should try to piece it together, but I'm wondering what you're seeing too.
Yeah, I'll first offer the cheat code pick. If we go over, usually 50% is our cutoff. I
Yep.
was really surprised that Nico Horner, if I have it right, is only 51% rostered in Yahoo.
Wow.
I thought I would have guessed he would have been 70 or 80%.
Yeah, he should be.
So there's somebody who I think might be available in some of the shallower formats. The more competitive leagues, obviously he's around gone. I had Stott on my list. It's been mostly batting average. It hasn't been category juice for him, but he's a guy who
Yep.
showed there was at least a case to be made for him that he was an ascending talent into this season. So I could see maybe picking up him. Brian Turang has been better than I expected in Milwaukee, showing good plate discipline. He's got some walks. He puts contact on the ball, and he's got playing time in Milwaukee. So he's a guy you could look at. I'll also say I liked Elvis Andrews. I know it was hard to reconcile who Elvis Andrews was because he was terrible in Oakland last year, and then he went to
Yep.
Chicago with the White Sox. He was terrific for about a quarter of a season. He's off to a really bad start, and his roster tag is down to 17%. I'm not willing to give up on Andrews. I mean, you shouldn't be radically changing your opinion of that many players through 9 games anyway.
Sure.
So the fact that he looks so good at the end of last year, Chicago is going to play him. He qualifies at second and shortstop. I'd be willing to kick the tires on him and give him 2 or 3 weeks and see where it goes. I do have some Andrew shares. I'm not dropping him for anybody right now, again, because this position isn't particularly deep. If you can just take the middle, if you don't necessarily need a shortstop, Isaac Paredes is off to a good start for
Yeah.
the Rays. He hit 20 home runs, I think it was last year. He didn't have the greatest
Yep.
average. Now I know Tampa Bay's an interesting team, right? Because they're 9-0. But you could not have played an easier schedule than the Nationals, the Tigers,
It's true.
and the Oakland A's. This is like one of those
Crazy.
college basketball coaches who wants like the easiest schedule possible in November. I don't know how Tampa Bay got the schedule. Eventually, they're going to have to play the Yankees and the Blue
Yeah.
Jays, and then the Astros and the good teams in the American League. But look, they're awfully good anyway, and they have a lot of fantasy players that we're interested in. But maybe Isaac Paredes just needs to bump that average up a little bit. We know the power will play. He has multiple positions of coverage. His tag was actually a little bit lower than I expected. I think it might have been under 10%.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
he's somebody I'm rolling out in a 15-team league. We are Team Isaac. Me and my partner are throwing the Isaac double point text messages at each other. A nod to Isaac Washington, the Love Boat, which is dating myself. But yeah, Isaac Paredes is. I have room for him in the deeper leagues.
Colton Wong is off to a terrible start,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe he's been dropped in some places. I still think he's going to end up doing what he usually does, like pretty boring. Maybe hits leadoff for the Mariners and gets you some nice counting stats. So that's not a bad option.
Like it.
Ha-Sung Kim with the
Mm-hmm.
Padres too. Again, kind of boring profile fantasy wise, but when it's all said and done, he'll probably be double digit homers and steals and playing time safe. He qualifies all over. So you're not going to replace Oneil Cruz and what his upside is, but can you piece it together for a few months? I think it's certainly possible. And when I initially heard, fractured ankle for Cruz, I was like, oh, he's done for the year. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Like maybe he'll be back in August, mid-August, something like that. So there's still some hope here in the later part of the season, but hopefully you can find some options to get you through to that time. And
Let me present one other alternative. This is the two-way thing, two-way street. Okay, if your team has gotten off to a horrendous start with injuries, with underperformance, maybe if your league has, say, IL spots, but you already have your IL spots filled, maybe you trade Oneil Cruz to somebody, the guy who's in first place in your league, who has everything going right, who has no IL spots filled, and
yeah,
you make a trade where it's like, look, I need to get better now. You can sit on this asset and hope Oneil Cruz helps you for the final quarter of the season. Now, again, if you're off to a great start, maybe you can give the guy who swoops in, makes a low ball offer, or just something you don't need off your bench, and think, well, if Oneil Cruz gives me anything down the stretch, then it's a bonus. I'm just trading somebody I wasn't going to use anyway. I have this open IL spot, so it may be a case where if you need immediate help, maybe I'm not saying give Oneil Cruz away. I wouldn't want to drop him, although in some leagues maybe you might have to, but. You can always think about trading him if you need immediate help, and if you can if you're in position to where you don't need the help right now, you don't have those IL spots filled, maybe he'd be somebody you could trade for on the cheap. I always think this way. This is kind of a fantasy football move where when fantasy football players get hurt for me, and again, I don't mean to treat these players like commodities. They're human beings. We're all Oneil Cruz fans. He's a really fun player. He's the type of guy you could take if you had like an aunt or an uncle who didn't like baseball at all, and you took them to a Pirates game. You said, "Who's the young player they're excited about?" See if you can pick them out. They'd all pick out Oneil Cruz. I mean, he just jumps
no
off
doubt.
the page. He's an exciting guy. He's a spectacle. I mean, he's capable of doing just about anything on a baseball field. Hit a home run 450 feet, break Statcast data. He's that kind of guy. But in fantasy football, when players get hurt for me, a lot of times I'll just try to trade out of the injury and keep my roster healthy, keep my roster more immediate to helping me in the moment, and not worry about later on. So that's just a football strategy that you can maybe apply to baseball as needed.